I let my spoiled son dump boiling soup on my head, knowing his cruel laughter was the last sound he would ever make as an owner. He gave me 5 minutes to get out, but I only needed 3 to take back his entire life, including the house, the car, and his fake business empire. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. The phone rang, splitting the quiet of my Tuesday afternoon. It was the heavy beige rotary model, planted on the side table like a stump. I was sitting by the window, my Bible resting open in my lap, watching the dust motes dance in the slim sun. Tuesdays were supposed to be silent days. The second ring, insistent, demanding, pulled me back to the world, and I knew exactly whose impatience it was. With a soft sigh, I lifted the receiver. "Praise the Lord," I said. My voice was a soft, smooth alto, the kind that used to calm tenants, but now seemed to annoy my own flesh and blood. "Mabel, you there?" His voice, Devin's voice, was cold oil, slick on the surface, thick underneath, gumming up any real connection. A call from Devin was never a greeting. It was always a summons. "I'm here, son. How are you?" "Busy, Mama. Always busy. Look, Chantal and I are having a special dinner this Sunday at the house." He called it the house, always forgetting it was the place my father built, the place I brought him home from the hospital. I let him live there rent-free for 15 years, thinking it would build him up. Instead, it had just inflated his privilege. "A special dinner," I repeated, keeping my voice level. "What's the occasion?" The ice stopped clinking in his background glass. "Occasion? We don't need an occasion to see our own mother, do we?" His voice was suddenly sticky with fake warmth. "Chantal is making her famous roast. Just for you?" Chantal's famous roast came in a foil tin from the most expensive caterer in town. I felt a cold knot tighten in my chest. A deep, familiar premonition, like a tremor hitting the bedrock of my soul. This wasn't a dinner. It was an ambush. They wanted something, or worse, they were planning something. My son had become a stranger, his mind warped by his vain, greedy wife. "That's thoughtful of you, Devin," I said, choosing my words carefully. My pulse spiked, not from fear, but from the realization that the time for patience had run out. "So you'll be there, 6 sharp. Don't be late, Mama. You know Chantal likes to eat on time." He was already dismissing me, his duty done. "I'll be there." "Good. And Mama." His voice dropped into that patronizing drone he used when he was about to land a casual cruelty. "Try to wear something nice. You know, Chantal's friends might stop by." The line clicked dead before I could reply. I held the buzzing receiver for a moment, the dial tone screaming in my ear. Wear something nice. He meant my modest print blouses and church dresses were an embarrassment. He was ashamed of the woman who had scrubbed floors and started a laundromat with her last $100. The woman who had built that single laundromat into a silent, sprawling network of properties and businesses, the very network funding the roof over his head and the gaudy watch on his wrist. He saw my simple clothes, my small apartment, my old phone, and he only saw a poor, aging widow. He never once asked why I lived simply. He just took, assuming it was his due. I placed the receiver back on the cradle. The silence of the room returned, but now it was charged with the threat of lightning. I looked down at my hands. They were wrinkled, spotted, showing my 78 years, but they were strong. They had signed million-dollar contracts. They had held my dying husband. They had raised a son who now saw me as a burden to be managed. Sunday, 6 o'clock. I walked across the room to my closet. Behind the coats was the safe, a small, dark, gray metal box bolted into the wall. I opened it and pulled out my old black leather bag. It was the same bag I had carried for 20 years, worn soft as butter. Chantal hated it. She called it my junk bag. My bag was my briefcase. It was where I kept my life. Tonight, it needed the folder. I walked to the filing cabinet and pulled out the thick labeled file. Legacy Property Trust 93. This file held the deeds, the leases, the trusts, and the bank papers. It held the truth. I had prayed I would never have to use it. I had hoped Devin would finally grow up and see the value of dignity, not shine. The paper slid into the protective plastic sleeves inside the old bag. As I was closing the cabinet, I paused. I needed to be absolutely certain. The trust was ironclad, but there was one small, ancient contingency my lawyer, Mr. Pierce, had always warned me about. A single ambiguous clause regarding provisional caretaking that could be twisted if Devin proved I was incompetent. I pulled out my new phone, the slim, quiet device Devin didn't know I owned, and quickly typed a secure message. I had to know if Devin had accessed the original trust documents, looking for that exact loophole. I needed confirmation before I walked into that house on Sunday. I need eyes on the registry. Now. The silence in my apartment pressed around me. My quiet Tuesday was over. I had to prepare not just my defenses, but my surgical strike. Sunday arrived draped in humid gray. I spent the morning at church, praying not for Devin's return to me, but for his soul. Back at the apartment, I changed clothes. This was a performance, and I would dress the part of the disposable old woman. I chose the beige polyester dress from the back of the closet. It was clean. It was pressed, but it was shapeless, and the color was utterly defeated. I paired it with my comfortable shoes, the ones with the scuffed toes. No jewelry, no pearls. The disguise was complete. I picked up my old black leather bag. The file sat heavy and real inside. I did not call a car. I walked 3 blocks and caught the number 12 bus, just as I always did. The bus groaned and hissed its way across town from my quiet, older neighborhood to the leafy, manicured lawns of the suburbs, the place where the house stood. I owned the building I lived in. I owned the bus depot. I even owned the land under Devin's local bank. But I sat on the hard plastic seat, my bag on my lap, and watched my city slide by. When I stepped off the bus, the air was thick and sticky. It was a 10-minute walk to the house. I walked slowly, my spine straight, savoring the cool steel feeling that was replacing my maternal warmth. From the end of the street, I saw the house, a strong, brick-faced colonial. But closer up, I saw the rot. The flower beds were choked with weeds. And there, parked in the driveway, sat the gleaming black luxury sedan, a ridiculous oversized machine that cost more than most people's annual income. As I reached the sedan, I paused. I saw a small white slip of paper stuck under the driver's side wiper blade, an echo image of his frantic reality. I knew what it was before I bent down. A repossession warning. Devin was bragging about a second car, yet he was days away from losing the first. His entire life was a house of cards held up by my silence. I smoothed my dress and walked up the path, raising my hand to the doorbell. I heard shouting inside, followed by Chantal's sharp, high-pitched laugh. The door was finally pulled open. Chantal stood framed in the doorway, a living testament to cheap perfume and expensive bad taste. She wore a tight red leopard print dress, and gold hoops the size of my fist swung from her ears. Her acrylic nails, at least 3 inches long, clicked impatiently against the phone in her hand. "Oh, you're here," she said. Her smile was a tight grimace. "Hello, Chantal. You're looking well." "I know, right?" She didn't move, just scanned my beige dress and scuffed shoes. Her nose wrinkled in a tiny, involuntary show of pure disgust. She leaned forward, offering me her cheek. I kissed the air an inch from her face. The paper kiss, all perfume and no contact. Her skin was caked in foundation that was 2 shades too light. "Oh, Mama," she said, her voice dripping with false pity. "You really wore that? I told Devin we were having company." "Devin said a special dinner just for me," I replied evenly. "Yes, well." She waved a dismissive, jewel-encrusted hand. "Friends are stopping by. You know how it is. We're social." She said the word social like it was a title she had earned. She turned and walked back into the house, leaving the door open. "Wipe your feet. I just had these floors done." I closed the heavy oak door behind me. The air smelled wrong, chemical polish and Chantal's perfume. The battle had begun, and I had only just crossed the threshold. I followed the sound of Chantal's clicking heels into the dining room, and I stopped cold in the doorway. It was a sacrilege. The warm, soft yellow walls, the solid mahogany table built by my father, all gone. In their place was a sterile, blinding white marble floor and stark white walls. In the center sat a gigantic dining table made of a single slab of glass, balanced on a tangle of twisted, gold-plated metal. "It's Italian," Chantal said, noticing my stunned silence. "Imported. Cost more than your entire apartment." She ran one of her long nails down the white leather chair back. "I bet," I said, simply nodding. "It's modern, Mama," Devin said, walking in from the kitchen. He was not in a suit, but a silk tracksuit that shimmered under the harsh lights. He kissed my cheek, a quick, dry peck. "Chantal has incredible taste." "Of course," I said softly. I chose a chair at the far end of the glass monstrosity. It was cold and uncomfortable. I placed my old bag, my briefcase, on my lap this time. "So, Mama, how's retirement?" Devin began, taking the seat at the head of the table. Chantal sat at the other end, leaving us separated by a sterile football field of glass. "Still clipping coupons?" They shared a snicker. "I keep busy," I said. "Church, my garden." "That's nice." He snapped his fingers, and Chantal immediately poured him a dark liquor from the gold chrome bar cart. He didn't offer me anything. "Business is booming," he announced, swirling the liquor. He was performing, bragging for an audience of one. "Just closed a massive deal. We're booking a trip. Dubai. First class all the way. You can't put a price on living your best life." He was 48 years old, but he looked like a spoiled child, dressed in borrowed ambition. I knew the property management company I'd gifted him was 3 months behind on its property taxes. The delinquency notices came to my P.O. box. "That sounds expensive, son," I said. I sipped the heavy, angular glass of water they had provided. Chantal let out a sharp, brittle laugh. "That's rich people's talk, Mama. Expensive, affordable. We see what we want, and we get it." "But you must be careful, son," I pressed, using my boardroom voice for a microjab. "Debt is a cruel master." Devin slammed his glass on the glass table. The glass rang like a bell. "Debt? Who said anything about debt? I'm talking about assets, things you wouldn't understand, Mama. Your world is laundromats and rent checks. My world is global." He was breathing heavily, his face flushed. I had hit the nerve. I gave them nothing else, just sat and waited, letting my silence become a judgment. When the meal arrived, it was as cold and pretentious as the room. A plate with a single scallop and 3 asparagus spears. I ate slowly, methodically. The food was tasteless, but I would not complain. As I finished, Devin got up for his 3rd whiskey. He didn't look down and tripped, his foot catching the strap of my bag. My bag flew across the white marble floor. My keys, my coin purse, my church bulletin, and the thick, rubber-banded Legacy Property Trust 93 folder scattered. "Ugh," Devin snarled, annoyed at the interruption. "Why do you put that old junk right in the way?" He nudged the file folder with the toe of his expensive shoe. "What's this, Mama? More coupons or your will? Leaving me all your porcelain cats?" He laughed, a harsh, broing sound. I didn't answer. Slowly, deliberately, I bent down. My knees cracked in protest. The floor was Arctic cold. I gathered my things. Then I reached for the folder. Devin's shoe was still on it. "Excuse me, Devin," I said softly. He moved his foot. I picked up the folder, wiped away the black smudge, and secured the rubber band. I placed it in my lap. I would not put it on the floor again. I returned to my seat. The silence was brittle. I had refused to break. "I'm done." Chantal threw her napkin on her plate. "Darius, didn't you have something you wanted to talk to your mother about?" "Actually, Mama," Chantal said, standing up, "since you're just sitting there, make yourself useful. Clear these plates." This was the test. I was the help. "Of course, dear," I said. I stood and gathered the heavy, expensive china. I carried the stack into the kitchen. It was a mess, foil containers and catering boxes everywhere. As I scraped the plates, I saw it. A tiny, silent silver box, the size of a matchbook, taped underneath the glass table. A microphone. They weren't just humiliating me. They were recording my reaction to twist it into proof of my incompetence. I finished scraping the plates, and a terrifying, absolute calm settled over me. I returned to the dining room. Devin and Chantal were giddy, exchanging quick, excited glances. They had confirmed it. I was weak, I was a servant, and I would do as I was told. They had just passed sentence on themselves. "Sit down, Mama," Devin said, his voice now full of false, booming authority. "Chantal and I have a surprise for you." "We worry about you, Mama," Chantal began, her voice syrupy with fake maternal concern. "All alone in that tiny apartment. It's not safe. And frankly, it's not a good look for us, for Devin. He has a reputation to maintain," Chantal added. "So we've decided to make a change," Devin pushed on. "A big one for you, Mama. It's a celebration." Chantal squealed and hurried into the kitchen. I heard the clank of a pot, the whoosh of gas. A moment later, I smelled it. The harsh, overly salty, artificial smell of canned chicken noodle soup. My blood went arctic. Chantal came back out, walking with theatrical slowness, carrying a gaudy, white porcelain soup tureen painted with gold cherubs. It was steaming. She placed it on the glass table. "Mama, you're looking a little stale," Chantal said, her eyes gleaming with malice. "You need something to freshen you up." Devin stood up. He cracked his knuckles, a slow, deliberate sound. He put his hands on the handles of the tureen. "We thought you needed a wake-up call, a little zest." He lifted the tureen. I looked at him, my son, the man I had raised. His face was twisted into a mask of ugly, childish cruelty. I did not brace. I did not beg. I simply watched. "You gotta let them feel the sting of the world, Mabel." I thought of my mother's words, else they grow up thinking they are the sting. Devin dumped the entire contents over my head. The world exploded. First, the thick, viscous slosh, followed by the splatter of scalding liquid hitting my shoulders. The shock of the heat was terrifying, a sudden blossoming pain that seared my scalp. The thick, greasy liquid ran down my face, into my eyes, instantly blinding me with a salty, stinging film. Noodles and mushy, square-cut carrots slapped against my cheeks. I choked on the artificial smell of chicken broth and sodium. For a single frozen second, the world was nothing but the burning heat, the sting, the sound of the soup dripping. Drip, drip, drip. Devin tossed the empty tureen onto the table. It clattered on the glass. My vision blurred, slowly clearing. I blinked, and an overcooked noodle fell from my eyelashes onto my cheek. Then the laughter started. Chantal shrieked, her phone up, recording the entire thing, her hands shaking with vicious glee. "Oh my God, Devin, look at her! Just look at her!" Devin roared, doubling over, pointing. You look pathetic, old woman." The laughter severed the last thread of maternal obligation. The part of me that was Mama was burned away. What was left was Mabel Johnston, the woman who built the empire. The laughter was the sound of them sealing their own tomb. They were laughing at their own funeral. I sat perfectly still. I let them laugh. Slowly, deliberately, I wiped the greasy film from my eyes with my thumb and forefinger. Devin finally caught his breath, his laughter tapering off into a satisfied, wheezing cough. He pointed a long, lazy finger at me. "All right, Mama, show's over." His voice was flat and cold as the marble floor. "You've got 5 minutes to get out." The words hung sharp and clear. 5 minutes. "You heard me," he snarled. "Get out. We're done with you. We're selling this house. We're moving to a penthouse downtown. And you are not part of those plans. We're putting you in a home, Sunstone Place. We've already picked it out." He looked at the gaudy watch on his wrist. "Your 5 minutes are ticking. We're forcing a sale. Take your little share, or we'll fight you in court and prove you're incompetent." "Trust me," he sneered, looking at me, dripping with noodles. "That won't be hard to do. You look insane." I slowly lifted my head. I looked at him, not as a mother, but as a predator looks at a very stupid animal. "You're right," I said. My voice was a low boardroom tone. Devin's smile faltered. My silence was unnerving him. "I am?" he stammered. "Yes," I said. "The time limit. It belongs to me now." The silence that followed was heavy and total. Devin's bravado had collapsed into a thin, cheap suit, and he was beginning to realize he was naked underneath it. My first move was to attend to the artifact. With a steady, deliberate motion, I lifted the heavy, wet bag and placed it on the $10,000 Italian glass dining table. It landed with a wet, sickening thud. A small puddle of orange-gray soup immediately formed around it. "My table!" Chantal let out an involuntary shriek. "You filthy! It's ruined!" I ignored her. Her table was the least of her worries. Slowly, precisely, I unzipped the main compartment. I bypassed the mints, the keys, the lotion. I pulled out the file folder. I slipped the rubber band off, folded it neatly, and placed the small square on the table. Then I opened the folder. Devin and Chantal watched, confused. "What? What the hell is that?" Devin stammered. "More coupons, Mama," Chantal hissed. Tears of frustration, not remorse, welling in her eyes. I looked up, my eyes locking with Devin's. The soup dripped from my chin onto the glass. "You're right," I repeated. My voice was cold as the grave. 5 minutes. Then everything you think you own is gone. The blood drained from Devin's face. "What are you talking about? Am I delirious? Am I senile?" I pulled the first document from its protective sleeve. The plastic made a soft shushing sound. "You said this is your house. You said you were forcing a sale, a bold move for a man who was legally a tenant." I slid the paper across the glass. Devin snatched it, his hands trembling. Chantal crowded behind him. "It's the deed," he whispered, scanning it wildly. "Indeed. Now look for your name. Take your time." His finger traced the lines. It's not here. Mama, what did you do? You're looking for Devin Johnston. You won't find it. You're looking for Mabel Johnston. You won't find that either. This house, Devin, along with the land under the first 4 laundromats, is held by the Legacy Property Trust 93. I leaned forward. "I am the sole trustee. Do you know what you are?" He just stared. "You are the provisional caretaker," I quoted from memory, "permitted to reside here at the sole discretion of the sole trustee." "My discretion," I stated, tapping the deed, "has just run out." Chantal whimpered. "No, he's your son. He was my son when he was invited to dinner. He was my son when he mocked my clothes. But when he poured boiling soup on his mother's head and laughed, he became a liability. And I am very, very good at solving problems." Devin was shaking his head violently. "The business, my business, it's mine. I built it." "Did you really?" I pulled out the next document. "Let's move on to accessories." I slid the original articles of incorporation and the tax delinquency notices across the glass. "You are the president on a salary, which I can and will terminate effective immediately for cause. Assaulting the majority shareholder with hot soup is, I believe, excellent cause." "You are fired," Devin gasped. "No, mama, please." "Item 3, the black luxury sedan in the driveway, the one you were bragging about." I slit the lease agreement. "The lessee is Mabel Properties, LLC. You are listed as a permitted driver. A privilege I will be revoking in about 10 minutes when I call the leasing agency and the police to report the vehicle as unauthorized." Devin's head dropped. He couldn't look at the paper. "And Chantal," I said, turning my gaze to his wife, who had gone translucent. "Your boutique. A lovely little shop in a lovely little building. A building which I own. You are 6 weeks late on your rent, my dear. Consider this your formal 30-day notice of eviction." Chantal slid down the wall, making a small choking sound. "And finally," I said, pulling out the last document, "the corporate bank signatory card. The trip to Dubai, the penthouse you were planning to buy. You seem to have forgot. All your corporate accounts require 2 signatures for any withdrawal over $1,000. Mine and yours. I will not be signing any more checks, Devin. I will not be funding your best life. As of this moment, you are frozen. You are locked out." I put my hands flat on the table, the junk folder now empty. The truth was all out. Devin stared at the pile of papers, his body frozen. He was a king one moment, a beggar the next. He finally looked up, his eyes wide and hollow. "I'm your son. I'm your only child," he screamed, tears of pure terror running down his cheeks. I reached back into the empty folder, feeling the bottom. My fingers found a single sealed white envelope I hadn't revealed yet. I pulled it out. The handwriting on the front was not mine. It was my late husband, Samuel's, and the name on the front was one neither Devin nor Chantal had ever heard of. "You're right," I whispered, "but you are not my only heir." Devin stared at the sealed envelope in my hand. His eyes, already wide and hollow, dilated further. His body had been frozen by the documents, but this single, unbranded piece of paper shattered his remaining control. "Who is that?" he croaked. "Who did Samuel leave anything to?" "That's my father." "Your father, Samuel," I corrected, my voice steady, "was a good man, a flawed man, and a man who, unlike you, understood that a legacy property trust needs safeguards." I tore open the envelope. The paper inside was crisp. I didn't slide it across the table. I simply held it, my hand rock solid despite the soup still clinging to my fingertips. The truth felt like a physical weight, heavier than the china I'd cleared earlier. "This is an addendum to the trust," I stated. "Samuel made arrangements years ago. He knew your character was untested. This is a final condition." I read the crucial clause aloud, my voice clear in the sterile room. "Should Devin Johnston, for any reason, fail the character and competence clause, defined here as demonstrable, recorded acts of theft, physical abuse, or attempted fraud against the principal trustee, his interest in the legacy property trust, and any future associated trusts, shall immediately be extinguished. His share shall pass to the unseen heir, Jordan Vance. The name hung in the air, Jordan Vance. Devin's jaw dropped. Chantal, who had been sobbing silently on the floor, snapped her head up. Jordan. Who? Samuel's son, I stated plainly. Your half-brother, Devin. He's lived quietly, working hard, believing his father never cared. Samuel, in his guilt, decided that if you proved yourself unworthy, Jordan would inherit everything. Samuel loved you, Devin, but he didn't trust you to manage what he'd built. He didn't trust me to do what needed to be done. Devin's face went from ashen terror to pure, desperate rage. A secret brother? A bastard? You're lying. That paper is fake. He launched himself from the chair, slamming his hands onto the glass table. Devin, no, Chantal shrieked, scrambling back. He lunged for the paper, but I was faster. The boardroom training took over. I stood and pivoted, the physical threat transforming instantly into legal leverage. Don't touch me, I commanded, my voice cutting through his roar. That paper is notarized, sealed, and a copy is filed with the county. And let me remind you, every word you have spoken, every threat you have made, and every action you have taken, including assaulting the sole trustee, has been recorded. I pointed to the spot in the kitchen where I had seen the tiny silver box. You placed a microphone under this table to record my incompetence. You have successfully recorded your own felony. I have the location of the recording device, I have the key, and I have the evidence of your premeditation. Devin froze, his hand inches from my face. The rage drained away, replaced by the sickening realization of his own trap. He looked at Chantal, who was staring at him, her lips trembling. Chantal, I said, turning my focus to his accessory. The police will be here in less than 10 minutes. Elder abuse, battery, wiretapping. If that video of you laughing surfaces, you'll be an accessory to assault and obstruction of justice. You lose your boutique, your house, and your reputation. Chantal made a high, wounded sound, like an animal caught in a snare. Devin, we have to go. Now. She grabbed his silk tracksuit, yanking him back. I'm not leaving. It's my house, Devin screamed, turning his broken eyes on me. I'm your son. You can't leave me with nothing. I'm not leaving you with nothing, I said, picking up the small gold key to the black sedan from the table. I am leaving you with the consequences of your choice. That key stays here. I tossed the key onto the table, where it landed with a tiny clink next to the puddle of soup. Chantal dragged him toward the entryway. They scrambled, tripping over the bar cart, desperate to exit the space that was no longer theirs. I heard the front door crash open, followed by a shouted curse from Chantal as they ran down the path and into the humid night. Silence descended, heavy and final. I stood in the middle of the desecrated dining room. It was over. I reached for my clean, quiet phone, the one Devin never knew about, and dialed Mr. Pierce. It's done, Thomas. They fled the scene. I need you to file a temporary restraining order against Mabel Johnston, citing battery and financial duress. And Thomas, they were recording me. They are trying to claim incompetence. I need a counter-filing now. Mabel, you're bleeding, Mr. Pierce said, his voice tight. The soup was hot, I replied, my voice dry. I hung up. I reached down to my old black bag, wet and ruined. My fingers closed around the plastic sleeve that held the deed. I had secured the house, but the legal fight was just beginning. My phone buzzed again, a secure message from Mr. Pierce. The provisional caretaking clause. They filed it this morning. The message from Mr. Pierce, they filed it this morning, felt colder than the wet nylon of my stained dress. They had planned this move before the soup. Their cruelty was not spontaneous. It was calculated. Devin and Chantal weren't just trying to shame me. They were laying the groundwork to have a judge rule me incapacitated. I did not wait for the police or an ambulance. I was not playing the victim. I was playing the CEO. My first priority was to sanitize the evidence of their premeditation. I walked back into the kitchen, the marble floor cold under my scuffed shoes. I located the silver matchbox-sized device taped under the glass tabletop. I peeled it off, the adhesive tearing with a small, sharp zip. I put the microphone, still slightly warm, into an empty catering box. Evidence secured. I called Mr. Pierce back. Add attempted wiretapping and fraud to the filing. I have the device. And Thomas, I need an injunction against the provisional caretaking claim by tomorrow at noon. Devin thinks he can take this trust by proving I need a nurse. We will prove he needs a warden. Mabel, that's 48 hours, Thomas warned. Then the clock starts now. I hung up and walked through the house, systematically changing the electronic codes on the doors and the garage. Each button press was a tiny act of reclamation. I could still smell the chemical polish, but beneath it, the scent of fear was dissipating. Next, I focused on the unseen heir. I pulled up the encrypted file Samuel had left me, the one containing Jordan Vance's contact information. I stared at the name on the screen. Jordan Vance. Samuel's first family, the one I had promised him I would keep secret, the one I had funded quietly for decades, ensuring Jordan had a solid education and a clean start. I hit the dial button. It rang 6 times before a wary, deep voice answered. Jordan Vance? Who's asking? The voice was guarded, the kind of protective caution you learn working a job that demands physical labor and clear eyes. My name is Mabel Johnston. I am your father's widow, Samuel Johnston. There was a long silence, broken only by the sharp, metallic clank of something heavy hitting concrete in the background. A mechanic, I realized. I know who you are, Mrs. Johnston, Jordan finally said, the name pronounced with respect, but no warmth. You send the quarterly payments? I do. But now I need to send you the entire trust. Your half-brother, Devin, just tried to steal the legacy. He also poured boiling soup on my head, and now he is claiming I am incompetent. Silence again. Jordan didn't laugh or express disbelief. That was telling. I don't know what you're talking about, Mrs. Johnston, Jordan said. I fix transmissions. I don't deal in trusts. You do now, I insisted. Your inheritance is dependent on this. If Devin wins his incompetence claim, he gets full control of the trust, and you get nothing. I need you to meet me. I need you to stand with me as a witness to my competence. Where? Jordan asked, still hesitant. I looked around the sterile dining room, the scene of the assault. I couldn't bear to meet him here. I needed to stand on bedrock. Do you know the original Johnston laundromat? On Elm Street? The one we call the Anchor? I asked. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, I will explain everything. Mrs. Johnston, I don't want to fight with your son. I have a life, Jordan said, a thread of fear now in his voice. Devin just put my life, and your father's legacy, in jeopardy, I said, matching his tone. 9 a.m., don't be late. I hung up, my hand shaking slightly this time. I had risked too much. I was forcing an estranged son into a public fight, paying off one vulnerability with a new one. I glanced at the soup-stained glass table, the silver key still glittering next to the pool of broth. I had won the house, but I needed to win the future. The air in the room felt heavy, anticipating the storm I had just summoned. The next morning, I drove Devin's black luxury sedan, the one I owned and he thought he did, to the Anchor. I parked the enormous, ridiculous vehicle directly in front of the shop entrance. It was a tangible victory, a final visual sting of Devin's loss. The Anchor, The first laundromat my late husband and I built was a sturdy brick building, humming with the sound of washing machines. It was my favorite property, humble but honest. I was waiting inside when Jordan Vance arrived at precisely 9:03 a.m. He was a tall man in clean, oil-stained jeans and a faded work shirt, carrying a thick binder. He looked exactly like a younger, more honest Samuel. "Mrs. Johnston." Jordan nodded, his eyes serious. He looked around the laundromat, his gaze resting on the row of ancient, indestructible washers. "Jordan," I said, stepping forward. "Thank you for coming. I know this is a shock." "A shock is finding a flat tire," he said, his voice curt. "This is a different word. And I want to ask you one thing, Mrs. Johnston. Why did you wait until the last minute? If you knew Samuel had made provisions for me, why keep it secret for 40 years? The question, my greatest failure, landed like a physical blow. I felt my shoulders sag, a momentary loss of control, my shame revealed. "I promised Samuel I would protect both of his sons," I confessed, looking at the floor. "Devin needed the illusion of ownership to thrive, and you needed privacy to build a real life. I failed. I was weak. I should have told you both years ago. But that is the past. We have a problem in the present." I pointed to the papers on the small folding table I had set up, the provisional caretaking clause. "Devin is trying to use my age and his planned assault on me to have a judge declare me incompetent. If he succeeds, he controls the entire trust and can legally lock you out forever. This is no longer about money. It's about reputation and Samuel's legacy." "But why would he think a judge would listen?" Jordan asked, flipping through the trust documents. He was a quick study. "Because they have a video. They recorded the assault and my reaction, hoping to use it as proof of a mental breakdown." Jordan looked up, his eyes sharp. "He wired the room." "He did," I confirmed, pulling the small silver device from the catering box. "And he is now challenging your parentage. He knows I need you to stand with me in public as a character witness, proving I am lucid and in control of my life and finances." Jordan's face hardened. "He wants to drag my mother's name into this." "He wants to destroy everything," I agreed. "If you stand with me, you lose your privacy. If you don't, you lose your father's entire legacy." Jordan placed his hand flat on the table, right next to the trust addendum. "I stand with you, Mrs. Johnston. Devin's always been about taking. It's time he faced the cost." A sudden, sharp series of knocks rattled the front glass door. A man in a cheap suit holding a stack of papers stood outside. "It's a process server," I muttered, checking my watch. Devin was fast. Jordan moved to the door. I saw the server thrust the papers through the slight opening. Jordan took them without flinching. He walked back to the table, his face unreadable. He slapped the papers down. It was a court summons. Devin's counterclaim was public, aggressive, and dirty. "He's not just challenging the trust, Mrs. Johnston," Jordan said, his voice flat. "He's challenging my bloodline. He's demanding a paternity test and a public hearing." The fight had officially moved from financial to public. Devin had played his last dirtiest card. He was willing to ruin his late father's reputation and drag his illegitimate brother through the mud, just to seize control of the final asset. The incompetence claim had been turned into a public spectacle, and Devin had just served the star witness. The public hearing was set for Tuesday morning. Devin had pushed for speed, hoping to capitalize on the appearance of elder abuse and the shock of the secret son reveal. I walked into the courthouse flanked by Mr. Pierce and Jordan Vance. Jordan wore a simple dark suit and carried himself with a quiet dignity that made Devin look like a cheap hustler. Devin and Chantal were already seated, looking pale and ill-kempt. Devin wore a wrinkled suit, and Chantal was in a dress that looked like it had been pulled from a donation box, a far cry from the silk tracksuit and red leopard print dress. They had already lost. The judge, a formidable woman named Judge Harper, called the case. Devin's lawyer began by playing the soup video, the footage from the hidden microphone. The sound of the slosh, Devin's roaring laughter, and Chantal's ecstatic shriek filled the courtroom. My own stillness, covered in noodles and broth, was presented as proof of my mental collapse. "Your Honor," Devin's lawyer droned, "this is a woman in crisis. She is confused, erratic, and unfit to manage an estate of this size. Mr. Johnston acted out of distress for his mother, and now she retaliates by inventing a secret heir and illegally freezing his accounts. We ask the court to honor the provisional caretaking clause and appoint Mr. Johnston as the immediate trustee." Judge Harper turned to me. "Mrs. Johnston, you may address the court, and please, just the facts." I stood up. I did not use my old, soft mama voice. I used the voice that had built an empire from a single $100 loan. "Your Honor, I will not contest the video," I said, meeting the judge's gaze. "I am the woman covered in soup. That was an act of assault by my son, and it was premeditated fraud." I pointed to the catering box containing the microphone, which was on the evidence table. This device was taped under my dining table. They came prepared to record my breakdown. "That is not distress, Your Honor. That is attempted theft." My words cut through the room. Devin's face went white again. "Furthermore, Your Honor," I continued, my voice gaining volume, "at the moment Mr. Johnston claimed he was financially sound, he was 3 months delinquent on his property taxes for the very business I gifted him. His corporate accounts, the ones he planned to use for his Dubai trip, were frozen because they require 2 signatures for any withdrawal over $1,000. And this is the repossession notice for the car he was driving." I gestured to the white slip of paper Mr. Pierce had entered into evidence. Mr. Johnston did not act out of concern for my health. He acted out of panic over his immediate insolvency. He assaulted me to create a legal fiction that would allow him to seize the Legacy Property Trust 93 before the bank seized his sedan and his wife's boutique. Jordan Vance then stood and addressed the judge, calmly confirming my lucidity, my financial clarity, and the accuracy of the trust's original terms. He handed over his paternity test results, which confirmed Samuel Johnston as his biological father, effectively nullifying Devin's last attempt at obfuscation. Judge Harper looked from the paper pile to Devin, who was slumped in his chair. "Mr. Johnston," the judge stated, her voice flat, "the court finds no evidence of incompetence. The provisional caretaking petition is denied. Furthermore, in light of the documented assault and attempted fraud against the trust, I am issuing an immediate, unconditional order of eviction for the property located at 154 Willow Creek, effective immediately." Devin made a choked sound. Chantal gasped, burying her face in her hands. It was over. Jordan put a steady hand on my back. We had won. It was a legal justice victory, hard-earned and total. Hours later, the sun was setting when Jordan and I returned to the house. The black sedan was gone, repossessed by Mabel Properties, LLC. The house was silent. The mess in the dining room had been cleaned by a professional crew Mr. Pierce had hired. The glass table gleamed, sterile and clean. I pulled out the papers for the last time. Jordan watched as I signed the documents, officially dissolving the Legacy Property Trust 93. In its place, I created 2 smaller trusts, one to fund Jordan's future and one to secure my own retirement, ensuring I would never be dependent on anyone again. I looked at the house, my father's house. I was no longer an embattled trustee. I was just Mabel. I handed the house keys to Jordan. It's yours now, son. Restore the garden. Restore the mahogany. Bring back the warmth. Jordan closed his hand around the keys. I will, Mrs. Johnston. Thank you. I walked out the front door and stood on the porch. I was dressed in a simple, dark navy suit now, not the beige dress. I looked back at the house, a shadow of the beautiful home it once was. The price of this victory was the total loss of my first son, the boy who became a monster. I felt a sharp, profound sense of release, but no joy. Jordan stood behind me and slowly closed the heavy oak door. The lock clicked shut, separating me from the painful legacy and sealing the promise of a future I had finally reclaimed. I breathe. The key in my hand finally feels light. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here